Good evening, everyone. Charlotte here from Enriching Environments for our Top Tip Tuesday Masterclass today, which is Tuesday, the 18th of October. I'm going to let you come on for a few moments. Hello, hi, everyone who's joining. There's people jumping on. Let's do a couple of waves while I can at the beginning. Hi, hi, hi. Thank you so much for joining. And this evening we are going to be talking about babies, specifically what we know about, what we know universally about babies, what we know about all babies, what we know about what every baby needs, every human needs from the earliest days, weeks and months of life. The way we're going to be approaching that is then how we can support our babies in a Montessori way, in alignment with these needs of these characteristics of every single baby, regardless of where they're from in the world, regardless of their race, regardless of their culture, their heritage. We're going to look at what every single baby needs. And what the characteristics, what the tendencies are for every human baby. And then what we can do is draw out, when we know what every baby needs when they're born, then we can draw out what's needed to support them in an environment that meets them where they are in following and unfolding their natural development. So let's begin. Those of you who are regulars will notice my giant plant behind me. I was looking through some Insta Lives from when I first started 2.5 years ago, and I noticed I had this beautiful plant behind me. So I was like, oh, that plant isn't around anymore because my cat ate it, so I went and got myself a new plant. But then I realised that this plant is absolutely massive, so excuse the huge plant behind me. It's looking a lot bigger on camera than I thought it would when I bought it in the shop. But yeah, I will be probably trying a different size for next week. But yeah, I hope it isn't too much of a distraction because it appears to be sort of growing out of my head. So let's talk about Montessori babies. Before we go any further, let's set the scene, let's set our intentions. So if everyone would like to take a deep breath in and exhale, maybe a couple of shoulder rolls, and think about what your intention is for our session today. What would you like to, how would you like to feel when you come away? What information would you like to come away with? What wisdom would you like to come away with? So set that intention now. How would you like to feel? What would you like to know at the end of this session? And then we can dive straight in. So, as I said, the way that we are going to approach Montessori babies, the title of this evening's Insta Live, this evening's masterclass, is we are going to look at, we're going to really zoom out, and we're going to look at what every baby needs, what every human baby needs. And to do that, we're going to use something called the Human Tendencies. And the Human Tendencies are something that were identified by Dr. Montessori, Dr. Maria Montessori, one of Italy's first doctors, who qualified at the end of the 19th century amidst a lot of resistance from people around her, from the establishment, from the men who were studying with her. And she noticed that all babies have what she termed these human tendencies, and those are essentially needs of every baby, regardless, as I say, of the socioeconomic group, race, culture, country of origin. They all have these characteristics, and there's between 8 and 12 of these human tendencies, depending on which book you look in. But what we're really going to look at tonight is just 2 of these human tendencies. And the human tendencies are things like the human need to be curious, the human need for exploration, the human need for movement, the human need for communication, the human need for imitation, for perfection, for self-actualization, for repetition. So all of these human tendencies as I say, are universal. And when we look at that from the context of babies, and as I said, we're just going to take two this evening, and we're going to take the human tendency for curiosity and exploration, and we're going to take the human tendency for communication. So these, every single baby in the world, as you will know if you have your own children, or you work in a classroom, or you have family members who have babies, every single baby, when they're born, they start to communicate from the earliest days and weeks. A really, really sweet thing you can do is if, with even a very young baby, a tiny baby, a couple of days or weeks old, you can do an imitation game, a copycat game. So you can stick out your tongue or blink your eyes and wait, and the baby will respond. The baby will imitate what you're doing, will answer, they will communicate, even when they're tiny and they can't communicate verbally, of course. So this human tendency for communication and for imitation is part of what makes us human. That is something innate, woven into us, into our DNA. And once we realize this in the context of babies, this is really exciting, because we know that we can immerse our child in rich language, in song, in poetry, in as many, if you're lucky enough to live in a multilingual household or multilingual nation, we can immerse our children in as many languages as we want to. We can give them rich language and poetry and song and dance and all different ways of looking at language, knowing that they need to communicate. Their innate drive, their desire is to communicate, and so they have the thirst for this knowledge, and it's an unconscious thirst for this knowledge. So whatever information we give them in terms of communication, they're going to absorb that and absorb that and absorb that. So as parents of a baby, what we can do, which is really exciting, is we can buy books with beautiful language. We can buy fun rhyming books. One of my particular favorites, if English is a language you speak at home, is by Linley Dodd, and she wrote a series called Slinky Malinky, which is about a cat, and Hairy Maclary, which is about a dog. And these books are about cats and dogs, but cats and dogs doing real cats and dogs things. They're not speaking or anything like that. They're not make-believe. They're stories about real animals doing real things, and they're rhyming, and the language is really beautiful. There's long adjectives and long verbs and lots of really, really descriptive. Hi everyone who's joining, lots of really lovely descriptive language. So as parents, yes, think about that our children have a desire, an innate desire, an innate drive, unconscious drive to communicate. So we offer as many ways as possible to communicate. So before they can speak, then obviously their non-verbal communication is really, really important. So the way that they're communicating is through their body language. Obviously, when we have a newborn, one of the only ways that they can communicate until they're identifying sounds is by crying. But it is communication, and it can mean, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm thirsty, all of those things. But it's all communication, and every human baby will communicate, has this innate drive. Hi Jenny, has this innate drive to communicate. So that's the first one of the human tendencies that I wanted to discuss. And for everyone who's joined, what we're looking at this evening is we're looking at babies from the perspective of the human tendencies, and the human tendencies are universal characteristics of all children around the world. All human babies, when they're born, they have these characteristics, and there's a list of between 8 to 12 that were identified by Dr. Montessori. Depends on which list you're looking at, but amongst these, this evening what we're looking at is the human tendency to communicate and the human tendency for exploration, for curiosity. And that's particularly relevant for babies, as we were just saying, because babies have an innate, hi Dana, have an innate drive to communicate from the earliest hours and days and weeks of life. Now moving into movement. Another one of the human tendencies we're going to look at this evening is the human tendency for exploration, for curiosity, for movement. So one of the other things that you will have noticed if you've been in the presence, if you're lucky enough to be in the presence of tiny babies and young children, is that all young children need to move, and our babies, from the tiniest baby, from a couple of days old, if they're given freedom to move, then they will move, they will wriggle, they will make a plan. There's so many stories. I wasn't lucky enough to have this experience with my children, but I know that a lot of friends, there's a lot of anecdotal stories about how when a baby's born, if it's placed on the mother's belly, then the baby will make its way up to the breast to feed for the first time, because there is this innate drive for movement, this human tendency. So babies know how to move from the earliest days and hours and days and weeks, and if we can give them this environment in which they can move. And what's really, really exciting for us to know as parents is that movement is the beginning of all cognition. So the more that we can allow them to move, the more that we can facilitate our homes in a way that promote movement rather than containment, then the more that they're learning. One of Dr. Montessori's most famous quotes is, "The hand is the pathway to the brain." And what she meant by that is that a child needs to be able to do things in a concrete way, real things in a real concrete way, in order to learn. There's no abstract learning in the early years. They have to actually do and feel and experience in order to learn, in order to build neural pathways. So what that means for your babies is allowing them freedom of movement. And let me give you a tiny little indicator of what that looks like. So from your newborn, or any age of baby up to when your baby's walking, what's going to be really, really beneficial is for your baby to have a movement area, a permanent movement area on the floor with a low mirror and a rail on the wall. So the low mirror is so baby can see themselves in the mirror. Because they're not very mobile when they're little, if they are lying in front of on their tummy or on their back in front of a mirror, next to a mirror, they're going to be able to look in the mirror and see the whole of the room behind them. They're going to see hi, I've just had a question about play, which I can come back to. Maverick, thank you for your question. I'll come back to that about play. So what we want with a baby is for them to be able to see all of the room around them, and that's what the mirror allows them to do. And the most exciting thing is when they're facing the mirror and they're looking in it, then they can see people coming behind them. And one of the greatest joys is when little baby has older siblings, or when mum or dad come in the room, they'll be able to see whoever's approaching coming from behind them, and they will get so excited and wriggle their little bodies. And one of my most fond memories is of Harry as a tiny baby, him looking in the mirror and concentrating. Then Olivia came into his view in the mirror, who's his older sister. She's just over 2 years older than him, and his little body would quiver with excitement. He would squeal and tremble. His whole body would tremble with excitement when he saw her coming. And just those moments that I saw for the two of them were absolutely the most golden in terms of the value of a floor mirror, in terms of all the other developmental benefits and physical benefits, but the emotional side of it, the emotional connection that builds and lays a framework for having a floor mirror is something that is just so magical. It's really difficult to explain. So we're going back to the movement areas. So babies, they need to be able to move, and in Western society, our instinct is to put them in a cot, a crib, a Moses basket, keep them in the car seat, contain them. And actually what we're saying is completely the opposite. We are saying find a place in the room, either the side of the room, near a window, so it can bright, if you've got option to have that through near a window or a door, a terrace door, so you can get some light coming in. And what we do is we have babies on sheepskins, medical sheepskin. I know you can also get vegan sheepskins, but they're not vegan sheep, but they're not sheepskins, if you know what I mean. But you can get a synthetic alternative if the idea of having a skin from an animal is an issue, you can get really, really high quality vegan skins now as well. So that's worth noting, because I know that's really important to a lot of people as well. So the benefits of a child, a baby lying, or anyone lying on a medical sheepskin, is improved sleep. There have been longitudinal studies in terms of eczema and asthma. Really supports with eczema and asthma, skin conditions, longer sleep, deeper sleep. In premature babies, then it helps babies gain more weight faster when they're sleeping on a sheepskin. And the reason for this is the body is completely cushioned. The muscles, the bones, the whole body is completely cushioned. And of course babies spend a lot of time asleep, so you want them to be completely comfortable. And the sheepskin is really safe because it's completely breathable. The air, because of the nature of the texture of it, air can pass through the fleece of the sheepskin, so it's a really safe surface for a baby to sleep on as well. We're talking about movement, aren't we? I've digressed. So your floor area for your baby, it is on the floor, movement, a mirror on the wall, a low level mirror, and then a bar just above. And the reason you need the bar is that baby, one day when they're starting to sit, when they're getting to that stage where they're starting to crawl, they're starting to sit, they're going to look above their head, and one day they're going to see that rail and they're going to want to pull up on it. And what's really, really amazing, and I remember it with both of my children, is the moment when they take that first leap and they hold on to that bar and they pull up and they stand up for themselves for the first time. And they're really, really wobbly, of course, and they wobble from side to side, but it's absolutely fine, because when they bump back down, they're bumping down on the sheepskin, on the rug, on the mattress that you've got there. So they're really, really safe when they bump back down. But what's really powerful is that they're looking in the mirror as well. So they are seeing themselves. The really powerful reason to have the mirror is that they're getting an idea of proprioception, their body in space, their spatial awareness. They're looking at the baby in the mirror that they don't notice themselves. They're looking at the baby in the mirror and they're seeing this body, these arms and these legs move. They're seeing this facial expression. They're seeing all of this, and they're getting a sense of spatial awareness, proprioception in those moments. So it's really, really important, this floor mirror. And it is such a point of interest for them, because of course whenever light falls on a mirror, it gives interesting reflections, interesting shadows in different parts of the room. They're studying their reflection, and it's really you can get the long mirrors or the squares from IKEA. They're really, really inexpensive. The IKEA ones, I think you can get stick-on ones now that go on the wall, and this little movement area. I mean, I had mine set up for Olivia and Harry I think only when I moved to this apartment 18 months ago. So Harry was 4 when I dismantled it, when I didn't move it when we moved to this place. So it's something that they will use all throughout babyhood and toddlerhood. It's not something that they use for 6 months and then they leave, because what you do is then once they're sitting and they're pulling up to this bar and they're sitting and then they're standing, is you put a mirror above the bar as well, and then they have this beautiful experience of holding onto the bar, pulling up, and then they see the baby in the mirror above the bar as well. And again, those are those type of moments when our children realize something for themselves, of their own intrinsic motivation, from their own efforts. That is just so mind-blowing to observe as a parent, and to see that this is true intrinsic motivation. Because once they've pulled up and seen the baby in the mirror, in the mirror above the rail, they're going to keep wanting to do that over and over again. And it's not because we're saying well done, or you're a clever girl, or you're a clever boy. It's because they want to do it. They've achieved something for themselves and they're curious. Remember that human tendency for curiosity? They've pulled up and they want to see what happens again. If I pull up and look again, is that baby still going to be there? So all of these, I mean, from From the perspective of what I know as a Montessori educator and working with babies and toddlers and young children for over a decade, I'd say that the floor mirror, the movement area for babies with the fixed floor mirror, which is a big mirror, not a small like round one that you get on those baby gyms, a big mirror along a long thin one along the floor that baby can look at, is the most important addition to your household, and inexpensive as well. Really, really inexpensive. I mean, if you're here in the UAE, I think those IKEA stick-on ones are like 49 dirham for a pack of 4 of those stick-on mirrors. It's really, really inexpensive, and you can put a rug down on the floor and the sheepskin on top, and that is a way for baby to hi Roxanne, to entertain themselves, to learn concentration for themselves, to look at their body in space, to look at the shapes and the shadows behind them when they're looking directly into the mirror, and they notice everything behind them. And particularly, and Roxanne is expecting her third baby imminently. Roxanne, we're talking about the floor bed and the movement area and the floor mirror. So for siblings to see, for baby to see siblings approaching in the mirror behind is so powerful. So our baby is not separate to the rest of the family. Our baby is at the heart of the family, and in this space that they're in, they have a sense of who they are and their importance within the family, because they're at the center of the family. And also a question might be that, will baby fall asleep on the sheepskin, or will they not sleep if they're in the center of the room, and all things like that. But they honestly do. They get so used to it, and it's so important for us to, particularly with siblings, and obviously transition to a new baby can be really, really hard for siblings. And the work there is to support the older siblings with respecting baby's space, and being gentle and only touching the baby when they've washed their hands and things like that. But most of all, it's so that they see that the baby isn't being kept separate from them, that this baby is part of them as well. It's really, really important to build that really, really strong lifelong bond. So what else do you want to say about Montessori babies? So the 2 human tendencies that we've covered this evening. Every single baby around the world, every human baby has lots and lots of human tendencies, but the one we focused on this evening are this need to explore, the need for movement, this curiosity. Every baby needs to move. So how can we facilitate that? By having a space dedicated to them, a little corner or the side of the room with this floor mirror where they can look and explore at their own pace. And of course, a baby starts to roll after 2 months, and then they'll start to wiggle and crawl, commando crawl, all of those things in the different stages. But everyone who's joining, but everything happens really, really gradually. So you're not going to be really surprised one day. You're going to see these beautiful stages, and the more freedom of movement we give our children, the more that they understand how deeply we trust them as well. There's an energetic exchange that happens, that the more freedom we give our child is that they understand, they have a deep sense that we trust them, and that in terms of our connection, our bond with them, is something which is invaluable, immeasurable. So that was the human tendency you spoke about, the need to explore and move. So don't contain your babies. They only need to be in a car seat when they're in the car. They don't need to be in a car seat at any other time. When they're at home, they will fall asleep on their movement area. They can, and also really great reason to have the sheepskin, and this is what I did with Olivia and Harry, is that when they did fall asleep on their movement area, the times that happened, then you can pick up the sheepskin and move baby to their bed or to your bed if you're co-sleeping, whatever's working. Hi, Monica. Whatever's working for you in terms of sleeping arrangements, but the sheepskin is the point of reference so that they can feel comfortable and relaxed on there. So you just move sheepskin, and also people are coming around to see baby, pass baby if you're into passing baby. I wasn't at all. I kept baby in the carrier the whole time and I didn't pass them. But if you do want to pass babies, or you're in a family where you have to pass the baby around, otherwise it's going to be really frowned upon, then pass baby on the sheepskin. Babies are really, really sensitive to being touched by other people, to smells, to sounds, all of these things. So if someone else wants to hold baby in the early, days and weeks and months, then always pass on the sheepskin. So baby's going to have this point of reference, the smell of the sheepskin, the feel of the sheepskin, the sensation, the texture, so they're still going to feel calm and relaxed. And then they can be put down in their bed or put down in the movement area. And then the other human tendency we spoke about is the need to communicate, the imitation. So we want to immerse our children with rich language from the beginning. Beautiful songs, beautiful poetry. If you're lucky enough to be multilingual, then make sure everyone in the household speaks their own language, speaks their best language. Traditional folk stories from your own culture, that's really, really important. And a celebration of who you are, of who you are as a culture. I know that a lot of people are really English focused and American or US or English focused, but honestly, one of the most important things is to honour your cultural heritage. It's really, really important. So seek out books in your mother tongue, in your native tongue. Ask your grandparents for traditional folk stories from your culture that you can pass on to your children. So they have this really deep sense of culture, and learning to communicate them in the language of your culture and the language of your cultural heritage is honestly something which is so, so precious and so, so important. So communication is really, really important. As I said right at the beginning, if you want to interact with the newborn baby and have a little bit of fun in this give and take, stick out your tongue and then put it back in again, and then just wait for them to copy, wait for them to imitate. All babies love to imitate and love to copy. It's something natural that we all do. So you can blink your eyes, you can pop your tongue out and stick it back in again. These are the human tendencies. So every single child in the world has these characteristics. So now I'm going to take a sip and I'm going to go back and read the questions. I can see that Diana has also written a question, and I'm going to go back to one of these. Hi Maverick. I don't know if that's your surname or your first name, but Maverick's question was, hi, thank you for taking the session and enlightening us. I'd like to ask a question. At what age the child generally moves to parallel play from solo play? Thank you. That's a really, really good question. And I think you're probably talking about part and stages of play, if I remember rightly, from my diploma and the child development modules that I did. So parallel play is something, it's basically play isn't as much of a linear process as we were kind of led to believe, or was previously believed, let's put it like that. There are definitely characteristics according to each age group, but parallel play, for example, lasts for a long time throughout early childhood, and children will engage in different types of play in different types of situation. So example, with children they don't know very well for the first time in the playground, they're probably, even if they're 5 years old, like my son, he's 5.5, he's going to engage in parallel play until he gets to know children. For example, but he would engage with role play and really complex play with his sister, for example, or with friends that he knows really well from school. In answer to your question, from what age the child generally moves to parallel play from solo play, I guess you're meaning in the really, really infant, the really baby stage. Generally speaking, children want to be or start to seek to be interested and alongside other children around the age of 18 months. And that doesn't mean that they want to play with them, and I think you really understand the distinction because you've said parallel play. Parallel play is when children want to play sort of alongside other children in the same area as other children, as I say, kind of joining into the playground but not wanting to engage in other children's games, and not being able to take turns and do role play and do more complex play as a much older child can. So roughly around the age, developmentally speaking, roughly around the age of about 18 months is when children will seek to be more alongside others in their play. And then of course as they get older, they want more collaborative play. But I would say roughly around 18 months, depending on the temperament of the child. But also, as I said at the beginning, this isn't linear. So the stages of play will really change according to the day, according to the season, and according to it's very, it's very situational, the different types of play as well. I hope that helps. And then I had another question, from Diana. Hi. Oh goodness, I've now lost your question. Where did it go? Oh, okay. Diana says, such valuable information, thank you. Is the sheepskin recent research, or is it used in those days of Dr. Montessori? So the research on sheepskin, now the last time I looked on that, I believe it was Australia and New Zealand. There was research done on NICU babies with regarding the sheepskin, but that probably was when I was doing my diploma, which was quite a while ago. So I would probably have a look and see what more up-to-date research has been done on sheepskin, on sheepskins and prem babies. But what I do know for sure is that medical sheepskins have been used for a long time with particularly the elderly, and elderly who are bedbound, who are spending a lot of time in bed, because sheepskins really support the muscles, so prevent bed sores. And so just from that makes sense. Obviously elderly people who are bedbound, they can't move about much, they can't get the circulation going, they're spending a lot of time in bed, a lot of time resting. And of course a similar scenario for newborn babies. They're spending a lot of time lying down, they're spending a lot of time sleeping, was it between 18 and 20 hours of the day in the first 6 weeks, something like that. And so our babies need the support for their muscles and their joints and their bones when they're sleeping to make them feel really rested and comfortable, because the shift from utero to the world is a really big shift. And I love this idea of the fourth trimester, that the only reason that human babies are the only mammals that are that are born when they're not fully developed. So we need to think of the first 3 months as the fourth trimester. They only come out when they do at 9 months. They're only born when they do at 9 months, so that they can be born naturally, in the majority of cases. So the human baby is completely and utterly dependent, and there's not many other mammals who can't walk or are completely immobile when they're born for such a long period of time. But you think babies, until they can crawl effectively to get their needs met, to crawl to get what they need, it's between 6 and 12 months, isn't it, before they can crawl. So it's human babies aren't yet fully grown, aren't developed when they come out, as it were, when they're born. So we need to provide them with a really nurturing first couple of months, this fourth trimester, so they can really develop in the way that they need to, so that they can get used to the world. In Montessori we call it a diminished environment, so a really quiet, calm environment as much as possible, and just a few simple things around them, And not too much stuff at all. As I said, just the floor mirror and the sheepskin, and being held by their primary caregivers, by mum, by dad, grandparents, whoever there is in the community. That's what's really, really important. So if we can think of the sheepskin as being this point of reference and this extra sort of protector as they come into the world, and of course a sheepskin is mammalian. It's from a mammal as well. So again, that gives this extra sense of comfort. I hope that answers your question. Are there any more questions? Maverick said, yes, Diana said, sheepskin has been used forever throughout history. Yeah, exactly. My question, if I can reword it better, is that something Dr. Montessori advocated for? So I'd recommend a book called Understanding the Human Being by Dr. Silvana Montanaro, and she developed the infant program under the stewardship of Dr. Montessori. So it is called Understanding the Human Being, and that on that program is when they spoke about sheepskins. So that must have been, I don't want to give you a date. I don't know exactly when that book was written, but that's when that was mentioned, and that became part of the Montessori philosophy. And yes, you're absolutely right. They've been used for centuries, no, not even centuries, thousands of years. Maverick said, "Thank you. Where can we learn about I think you mean the human tendencies?" So if you Google human tendencies, Dr. Montessori. That will tell you, hopefully, everything you need to know. And so what's really, really exciting is once we know the human tendencies between 8 and 12, these human tendencies that are universal, then that can inform every single choice that we make with what we buy for our children, how we prepare our homes, all of those things. Because they're universal, and what's really beautiful is it's going to be culturally relevant as well. It's not saying you need to do this or you need to do that. It's, okay, my baby has a need to explore, and what does that look like in my culture? What does that look like in my home? What does that look like in my community? My baby has a need to communicate, and we speak 4 languages in my home. Okay, what does that look like? What can we facilitate for her or him in that way? So the human tendencies allow us to really zoom out and see what is the path of natural human development. That's what we want to do, and that's what Montessori is all about, following the path of the natural development of the child. It's not about making brainy children or this children or whatever. It's really following the child's natural development. So when we know what every single child needs, then that can inform all of our other choices. I don't know if there's any more questions. No, I don't think. Thank you so much. Lots of people who have joined. Unless there's any other questions, shall we close with just a little moment and thinking back to the intention that you set at the beginning of our session. Take a deep breath in and trusting yourself as your child's first teacher, honoring your sacredness, honoring your wisdom as your child's first teacher. And when we know what the natural path of development of our child is, then we know exactly what to do. And we all have this wisdom within us, and that's more than anything what I love about Dr. Montessori's work is she said, this is what I've noticed, A, B, C, D, all of the amazing things she noticed, and she wrote huge numbers of books, but most of all her gift to us was, I noticed this and you can notice it too. This isn't a pedagogy based on her theories, this is from her observation as a doctor, trained as a medical doctor. These are my observations, she said, and you can see that too in your child. So that means that all of us become the teacher, all of us become the guide for our children. All of us have that wisdom within us. And all Dr. Montessori did is taught us how to observe and just reinforce to us that we have this wisdom, that we have this knowledge. So I would like you to place your hands on your heart, take a big inhale in, and know you have all that you need inside of you. Thank you so much for joining me. And next week we're going to be doing another topic which has escaped my mind, and I don't have my diary to me. I can't remember. It's a requested topic next week, and I can't remember what it was. Thank you so much for joining me. Sending you lots of love. Jenny, I think you have just started your term 4 down there in Cape Town. I hope your weather's starting to get really beautiful for your Cape Town springtime. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much for joining. Bye bye.